Hey guys, Phyllis here. This video is going to be on the best in slot itemization for the Frostfire Ballistics build. So a lot of people are going to be familiar with this setup and the itemization desired. If you are familiar, this image right here will suffice to kind of give you an idea of what you would like your roles to be. Otherwise you can listen to me kind of carry on for a few minutes about the items and the choices that you have. So most of the loot is very specific and required. There are going to be a few options for the itemization, whether you're going to want to run with the Calamity or a bow, the Atreyu, or the Crider Shot. That's going to determine how much attack speed you're going to need to hit the appropriate breakpoint. So if you're running with the Calamity, you're going to want to hit the 4.15 breakpoint, which is going to require a few additional attack speed rolls. These are usually picked up on the Taskers and the Unity, as well as the Lacuni Prowlers, and through the Enchantress, also going to help you get some additional attack speed required to hit that breakpoint. So once you decide what weapon you're going to want to run, that's going to determine, or even what weapon you're able to run. A lot of people aren't going to be able to support the Calamity itemization, so generally the bow is going to be more popular and easier to itemize around. And that is because with the bow and a decent pair of Taskers, you're going to end up at the appropriate amount of attack speed without having to pick up any additional attack speed. So the only other option outside of the weapon and those few rolls associated with the weapon choice is going to be, the big one is the bracers. You can run the slave bonds, you can run Krelms to avoid the vortex and things like that. You can run Lacuni if you need the attack speed for the breakpoint, and you might need to run Lacuni for the attack speed to hit the breakpoint. Or if you're just doing T6, you can run any number of bracers, doesn't really matter. I see people run the War's Eshian for the movement speed, Reaper Wraps for resources, the Custarian for the XP. You know, there's a lot of options on the bracers. You can kind of just choose whatever you feel comfortable with on that slot. The other swing slots are usually going to be determined by the content that you're farming. For example, if you're farming T6, you're going to prefer to run the SOJ, the Harrington, and the Crider Shot, as opposed to in greater rifts you would prefer a Unity, a Witching Hour, and the Atreyu. So depending on what you're farming, the content, that's going to kind of influence the itemization that you're going to want to run and things like that. And as for all the roles, I mean, you can see here I have all of them laid out. Most of these roles are going to be pretty straightforward, pretty intuitive. The only real exception is going to be the damage modifier on the helmet and the boots. You can get 15% to any of your spenders, and generally once you're at the higher breakpoint, the 2.85 and above, the frequency that your sentries are casting the elemental arrow is going to make that more valuable. In addition to that, you have the fact that your extra resources are usually spent on the elemental arrow, the frost arrow. It's going to provide you with additional uptime on your Call of the Weak and the Bane of the Trapped, increase the effective damage that way. It's also really efficient in terms of the damage potential to the hatred cost. It's very cheap on hatred and it does a lot of damage, provides the utility of the snare. So chances are your additional resources are being spent on the elemental arrow, and the higher breakpoint you get more elemental arrows. On top of that, if you're looking at running other variations of the sentry build, like for example the lightning, the ball lightning, meticulous bolts build, you're definitely going to prefer the elemental arrow for that build, being that it's a single spender. So most people are running with the elemental arrow just because it's generally more valued and more useful for more variations of the build. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of all of the stats. I figure you can just pause the video, look at the image, and kind of take down the stats. So I didn't really lay out the secondary modifiers here. Most people don't have the privilege to be picky on secondary modifiers. However, considering this is ideal roles, I feel like it's at least worth mentioning. In terms of the secondary modifiers, the only thing that's really important is to try to line up your secondary resistances such that you have, you know, 1 or 2 random rolls for secondary resistance that are unique. So you have, you know, a couple rolls for frozen resistance, cold resist, and then some fire resist and some lightning. Usually I kind of slack on the arcane and the poison, because poison is really easy to avoid, and arcane, with the exception of jailer, is easy to avoid, and jailer is just going to one-shot you anyway, so either skip or outrange jailer, and I usually lack on the poison and arcane res and try to double stack fire, lightning, and cold, and possibly physical. And the items that you're going to be able to get the secondary resistance are going to be like rings, your jewelry. The bracers are not an option if you're running slave bonds. If you are running the chromes, then that would be an option. Gloves are going to be an option. The belts are an option. Shoulders, helmet, chest, pretty much everything except for the boots and the pants, which already have all res on them. Not going to be able to get a secondary resistance. So there are, I believe, 8 total secondary slots that you're able to kind of juggle around to line up your secondary resistance. And, you know, if you can get 2 rolls on each, physical, cold, fire, and lightning, that would be really, really good. That's going to give you, you know, over 300 additional resistance to those schools, which are going to be more problematic for the Demon Hunter. The only thing I feel like I'm leaving out of this video in terms of itemizing and gearing and things like that are going to be the legendary gems. If you'll notice, I didn't touch base on the legendary gems. I'm actually going to link a video that I have, which I cover the gems specifically. I go through each legendary gem and talk about how they're useful and things like that. So try to keep the videos as simple and short as possible. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.